do we have laws? Laws are sets of rules that help people get along. They establish the things that society will and will not permit. Laws also set the rules for working out disagreements. Finally, they keep the peace and prevent criminal acts. If you break a law, you expect to be punished. Laws set punishments to discourage potential criminals. Good laws are fair, reasonable, understandable, and enforceable. Today we will examine where our laws come from and what kind of laws we have. As you view today's presentation, fill in the note sheet you were given in class. Please feel free to pause and rewind the lecture whenever necessary as you complete your notes. The sign on this slide is probably familiar to most of you. We have rules governing what's acceptable on our beaches to protect people's safety, one of the main purposes of government. Please pause the video and read the passage under Purpose of Laws. This slide will allow you to answer questions 1 and 2 on your note sheet. Resume the video when you're ready to move on to learn the sources of laws. Laws that govern our lives and protect our rights come from many sources. The following slides will give you the information you need to fill in the chart by question number 3. We have 5 main sources of laws. The first one is the U.S. Constitution. Next is the state constitutions. Next is statutes, case law, and administrative agencies. The U.S. Constitution. We know that a constitution is a plan for government. There are no actual laws in the Constitution, just guidelines that explain what our government wants to do and not do. It lays out the plan, and we check our laws against it to make sure we're following the plan. We know our U.S. Constitution is our highest or supreme law of our nation, which means no other rules or laws can go against what it says. It deals with the structure and function of government. These cases decide the limits of the government's power and the rights of the individual. Some examples would be laws that protect or limit our First Amendment rights. For instance, laws about freedom of speech, things you can and cannot say, would be examples of constitutional laws. Saying that it's freedom of speech to burn a flag is protecting your individual rights. Saying that you cannot yell fire in a crowded building without being arrested if it leads to a riot is an example of limiting our individual rights, because we know our individual rights are limited by the rights of others. Remember to hit pause if you need to stop for notes. State constitutions. These describe the basic rules and expectations inside a state, and they set up how the state governments will work or function. Now we know the U.S. Constitution gave certain powers just to the states, so then the state constitutions would describe how they plan on carrying out some of those things, like elections or marriage or schools. Often there are rights listed there that are guaranteed to the citizens of the state, in addition to those that are already in the Bill of Rights. Some examples would be any law setting up a state government or protecting or limiting rights at the state level. Now, statutes. Statutes are the laws written by a legislative branch of government. We've already learned about Congress, that's one example, but we also have state legislatures and local legislatures like cities and counties that write thousands of statutes all combined. Our statutes regulate the behavior of citizens. They might set a speed limit, or the minimum wage in a state, or federal minimum wage, or rules for food inspection. And they're a source of many of the rights and privileges that we expect. Many of you have told me that a free public education is a basic right. Not according to the Constitution, but many states will say that. The sign on the slide is an example of one Florida statute saying do not feed the alligators, according to statute 372.667. There are many reasons to protect the public safety why you would not want to encourage alligator visits by feeding them. Since one of the major jobs of government is to protect public safety, that statute was created. Case law is next. Often, especially in civil cases, a judge will decide the outcome of a case. These decisions, aka verdicts, are as strong as laws. Sometimes a judge cannot decide based on the existing laws, so he or she will look to older similar cases and decide what to do. This is known as using precedent, and these laws based on judicial decisions are called case law. Many of you might try to use precedent with your parents. Let's say you have an older brother or sister, and they started dating at 16. So you expect, because of what your parents allowed them to do, you will also be allowed to date at age 16. Remember, judicial decision would occur when there's no existing statutes, no written rules to base a decision on. So they look at history to see what other judges did. And then that lays down more decisions on how to interpret the laws. And this happens a lot in our civil cases. Administrative law are the rules and regulations the executive branch makes to carry out its job. And they're created by the administrative agencies. This picture shows you symbols for many of our different administrative agencies. Federal and state constitutions give legislatures the power to create these agencies so the executive branch can do its job. There is another example of checks and balances. The legislative branch creates the agency so the executive branch can carry out their work. Many agency rules and regulations are as strong as a law, so if you go against their rule, you are actually breaking a law. One example, the Federal Aviation Agency, known as the FAA, could order an airline to install a new type of safety device. If the airline did not do so, they would be actually breaking a law. So there are 5 major sources of law. You'll need to recognize and be able to give examples for each. Please note that on this slide, I have more detailed information that I might not have included on other slides, so you want to pause here and make sure that your notes chart has this information. Moving on to types of laws. Many of you have told me that you like watching shows like Law & Order, NCIS, or CSI. These TV shows are all about crime. Criminal laws prohibit or ban acts like theft and drunk driving. We also have other types of laws, including civil laws. These deal with disputes between people or groups of people. We have military laws that regulate individuals in the armed forces, and juvenile laws that are rules for individuals under the age of 18, like you. Criminal and civil laws affect all Americans. They help maintain a peaceful and orderly society, and people who break these laws often end up in court. Remember to hit pause if you need more time. Criminal law. Crimes against property are the most common type of crime. They do not include threats or violence against the victim, and they include crimes in which property is destroyed, damaged, or stolen. Stealing a bike, shoplifting, and setting fires are examples of crimes against property. Criminal law seeks to protect public safety, and crimes can either be misdemeanors or felonies. A misdemeanor is the more minor type. It's a minor crime for which a person can be fined a smaller amount of money or jailed for up to 1 year. An example would be threatening someone or stealing something valued at less than $100. Another example would be a speeding ticket or a ticket for a broken taillight on your car. These are all misdemeanors. A felony is more serious, and it's punishable by more than a year in prison. Examples could be kidnapping, most types of assault, and homicide, which is murder. Remember the CIDE at the end of homicide, that always means kill, and the HOMI, that's talking about a person. Civil law. These laws do not concern criminal offenses, so you're probably not going to jail, and they don't concern society at large. We don't all have to worry about those laws every day. These are regulations for disputes between 2 or more individuals. And it happens when people think they were harmed by somebody else's actions. If you've ever heard someone say, "I'll see you in court," or "I'm taking you to court," they're talking about a civil case where they're bringing forth a lawsuit. There are four major branches of civil law. They are contract law, which are the rules on agreements between parties to exchange something of value; property law, rules for buying and selling and how property is cared for; family law, which governs things like adoption and marriage and divorce; and personal injury law, which covers wrongful actions that cause injury to another person or damage their property. Remember to pause if you don't have time to get the notes down. I'll be here when you get back. Military law is another specialized form of law that also applies to citizens who work for the military, as well as those in the armed forces. This concerns things like disobeying or disrespecting superior officers, desertion, and mutiny. People accused of the above offenses may end up at court-martial. You need to remember, our armed forces often go into dangerous situations and have to listen to the people in charge. There are lives at stake if they don't. So showing disrespect or not following an order could lead to unnecessary death, as could desertion because people that are counting on you don't have you to be there for them. And mutiny, that's where you try to take over. And if you're not listening to the people in charge, again, there are many lives at stake. So there are more harsh punishments for people who break these rules. Court-martial is the court that's a special court made of officers that try those accused of breaking military law. Last but not least, we have juvenile laws. These, again, are the rules for individuals under 18. Anyone who commits a crime under the age of 18 is called a juvenile delinquent. There are two categories, though. There are delinquent offenders, who are young people who have committed acts that would be crimes if committed by adults, like it's illegal for me to punch someone and it's illegal for you to punch someone. It's illegal for me to spray paint on the building and it's illegal for you to spray paint on the building. There's also status offenders, young people who committed acts that would not be crimes if committed by adults, like running away from home or skipping school. If I skip school, well, I just skipped school. If I have an alcoholic beverage, I am above the legal age. You are not. So that is a crime for you, but not for me. There's a separate juvenile justice system for juvenile laws. It wasn't always this way. We used to try children the same way we would adults for breaking the law. However, we are aware that there are more reasons why children might make mistakes. They might need more guidance. They might just make a mistake and need to understand what they should be doing in society. And the government did not want lasting punishments for children who had just made a mistake. So they tried to provide more counseling, more supervision, more education to help children learn from mistakes before it ruins their entire life. I've given you everything that you need to fill in both sides of your note sheet. If you have any blanks, you need to go back through the video and search for where it was.